But let's start with the thing that I've been most excited about, Mr. Ed Greenwood. Yeah, the man who built the Forgotten Realms. Look at that. That's a that's a face. That's a face you remember. That that is definitely a guy who plays D&D. That's actually isn't he actually Elminster? Let's see here. Ed Greenwood. Yeah, Ed Greenwood is a Canadian fantasy writer and the creator of Forgotten Realms. He began writing articles about the Forgotten Realms for Dragon magazine beginning in 1979. Dang, that's like what? They just built the car or something, right? Like maybe electricity finally started coming around, something like that. And subsequently sold the rights to the setting to TSR, to the creators of Dungeons and Dragons role playing game in 1986. Let's see. Yeah, I think he is. Let me see here. Oh, Minster, because it says here in the Google, like, Forgotten Realms. Elminster met. I think he is, but it doesn't say. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked here. My bad, my bad. So today we're privileged to converse with Ed Greenwood, the legendary creator of the Forgotten Realms, a vast, intricate fantasy world that has enchanted gamers, readers, and storytellers for decades. Born from childhood tales in the mid 1960s, long before Dungeons and Dragons emerged, the realms have evolved into a cornerstone of the D&D universe, inspiring novels, games, and endless adventure. Um, doesn't Dritz series, doesn't that come from the Forgotten Realms also? Great series. I've only read several. I've only read like the first like 5 books, five, three or 5 books, and it just goes on and on and on. Great storytelling. Ed's boundless imagination and prolific writing continue to shape fantasy landscapes. In this interview for Tales, uh, in this interview for Tales from the Tavern magazine, oh my god, we'll delve into the origins, evolutions, and enduring legacy of his creations. Elven Made In. Many believe the Forgotten Realms were created specifically for Dungeons and Dragons, but the truth is that your world predates D&D by nearly a decade, originating in your childhood stories from 1965. Can you describe what the realms looked back in that what the realms looked like back then and how different it was from the version we know today? So apparently, oh wow, this guy did it when he was a kid. He was coming up with this stuff when he was a kid. Ed Greenwood. The realms back then geographically looked very much like the published realms of today, except that my original moonshades were an archipelago of many small islands, like Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea. The real world's Hebrides she knew she drew inspiration from. The Great Ice Sea covered the area now known as Icewind Dale. Another glacier covered the area later revealed as Vaasa and Damara. All across Toril, there were no close real-world analogs. So there was no Mastika and no Karatur. There were landmasses there, but not with those names and echoes of real-world culture. No Arabian Nights or Al Qadim areas. Kalimshan and Anarak were on my maps as largely desert lands, but not with the pashas and so on. I had satraps and the viziers. I believe drawing too close real world parallels shatter the suspense of disbelief and borrows needless cultural appropriation and denigration problems. Okay. Yeah, that is true. People start picking and choosing from different world or different cultures, and it just starts breaking down. Uh, and it just starts becoming a caricature and something bad. So a lot of the times, so try not to draw too much, quote unquote, inspiration when you are making your worlds and stuff, because then people start doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and then like nowadays it gets out, it's like, oh, they're cultural appropriation, and becomes a whole woke thing. Um, so no, that makes sense. I mean, of course it makes sense. He Ed Greenwood. Wait a minute, let me see here. Yeah. So Elven Made In. What inspired the initial spark for the Forgotten Realms as a setting for your stories? Were there particular books, myths, or personal experiences that shaped its early foundations? I was inspired by the fantasy and pulp tales in my father's den. My mother died when I was 6. Oh man, that's rough. And I craved escape into happier worlds. Those stories on my father's shelves grabbed me. From the Fritz Leiber Pfafferd and the Grey Mouser tales, I took the notion of telling episodic, self-contained adventures in the lives of a vagabond anti-heroes. With the world setting always there in the background and getting detailed in tiny additions within the tales I was writing, my original over the shoulder point of view main character in my stories, which I began writing as a 6-year old, oh my god, was Mert the Moneylender, a fat, wheezing old trickster who was a combination of Falstaff Falstaff. The traitor Nicholas van Ringe from Paul Anderson's oh, Polis, 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 Polisotechnic League of Stories, and Guy Galprick's drunken Scottish freighter engineer Glenn Cannon from the long-running series in the magazines of the day. Whew, those are some words. Actually, I think these might be um what you call it, misspelling, truthfully. So this is definitely just like a beta, right? The final might not be, well, the final isn't out yet, so it happens. I wouldn't call it a rough draft. It's definitely not a rough draft, but still some editing to be done, I think. Right? Something like that. But I digress. EMI, Elven Maiden. Key locations like Cormyr, Evermeet, and Waterdeep have become iconic in the realms. What real-world or fantastical inspirations led to their creation, and how did you envision their roles in their world? Cormyr was my vision of what a kingdom would be like if King Arthur, with his Knights of the Round Table, had gotten the chance to rule a kingdom for generations, but kept in line by powerful wizards on the side of law and order, if not always on the side of good. I wanted to explore what life would be like in a land over-endowed with fractious and nobles, and with two cities that had rebellious tendencies, Arabelle and Marsember, but overall peace and therefore prosperity, with a constant threat of being bought up farm by farm and city building by city building by wealthier land next door, Sembia. Evermeet was my idea of Tolkien's Rivendell, but a larger quote unquote hidden land where the elves of the realms kept their wider world at bay. My elves are haughty and noble, but they have always also been involved in bitter feuds with each other, between sorts of elves and between elven families. They they share a love of beautiful sylvan growth, so Evermeet is a leafy green paradise. Let me double check something. Okay. Waterdeep is the olden times Rome, Paris, or London of the realms. A sovereign, tolerant crossroad trading city. And although there were a few Lankmar and later Ankh-Morpork nods in its design, it's most rooted in my idea of what medieval London might have been if magic worked and a wizard, Agorian in elder days, and Kelvin more recently, kept order. The major real-world London inspir, uh, the major real-world London inspiration was the guilds, and now vanished gentlemen's clubs. There were gentlemen's clubs in this world? I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense. EMI. How did TSR first approach you about acquiring the Forgotten Realms for D&D? And what were your initial thoughts on sharing your personal creation with a larger audience? Looking back, do you have any regrets about giving away your world? Jeff Grubb, a senior at staff designer who read every issue of The Dragon, as Dragon Magazine was then known, had drafted an internal white paper proposing a unified game world for the second edition of D&D that wasn't Greyhawk, Gary Gygax's world, and wasn't Kryn, a world built around one big epic story. His reward for championing this idea was to find a candidate world, so as he'd read many passing references to the realms in my Dragon articles, he got my contact information from Kim Mohan at the Dragon. I was a contributing editor of the magazine, and cold called me at my public library workplace. Oh wow, just straight up called his work to find him. Jeff asked me if I had a complete detailed world at home or if I made it up as I went along. The answer to both questions was and is yes. Straight up yes. I was delighted to share my creation with the wider world, mainly because when I made colored maps of the realms, you could see my pencil crayon strokes. My pencil crayon strokes in all the oceans, and I was hoping for more beautiful maps. My only regret is that I didn't retain a tiny bit more creative control, so I could have prevented those real-world too close analogs I mentioned earlier. Copying a real-world culture or its Hollywood version is easier for artists, but it borrows a host of design troubles and cuts down on new, creative, different world details. Yeah, because you start changing things, you start getting stuck in the idea of that culture that you're borrowing from. Okay, makes sense. EMI. Your early contributions to Dragon Magazine, such as articles detailing the realm's lore, helped introduce the setting to fans. What was your experience like writing those pieces, and how did they influence the development of the published campaign setting? I started writing for the Dragon to fix some problems. Incomplete rules, mismatched between roles, and counter sheet on numbers of armies. Jesus, sounds crazy. With that, with the with the bleh, with the published Divine Right board game, and to feel better morally about throwing my creations, spells, monsters, and magic items at my players in the Home Realms campaign. In those days, everyone who could, players and DMs read Dragon, but my players didn't bring stacks of the magazine to our gaming table, so they had to try to remember what they had read, which I thought simulated what their characters knew or overheard in taverns in the realms. I was named a contributing, later creative editor of the magazine because Kim Mohan, who began as a journalist, not a gamer, was impressed by my Gates articles published in issue number 37 of the Dragon, because it had footnotes, as magazines are assembled in 8-page signature depending on how many advertisements are being run that month. Dragon could expand or shrink, and Kim really needed I assume, someone who could write finished text to order in a hurry to match this theme of that piece of art he already had on hand. I could, so I got a lot of work. Alongside the themes he asked for, I wrote lore pieces about the realms on topic wanted to explore, and in that way managed to get a lot of non-location specific realms lore into print. When TSR bought the realms, they asked for more and more about characters, places, and things they'd already read about in Dragon. So, the articles influence and direction of the published realms in that way. Okay, it's kind of neat. Uh-oh. Oh my gosh, was this not playing the whole time? My bad, everybody. Okay. EMI. As you took on a role at TSR, you wrote some of the most iconic novels in the realms, including the Spellfire Saga, Elminster series, the Cormier Saga, which is my personal favorite and helped me through one of the darkest times of my life, for which I'm extremely grateful, and books in the Harper series. What drew you to these stories and characters? I was never on staff at either TSR or Wizards. I was always a freelancer. Oh wow. And my Realms novels were works for hire. The publisher can literally change every word if they want to. That's funny. Spellfire, just the first book, was originally written as a trilogy. They cut down to one book in-house. So most of my published Realms novels, with the exception of the Knights of Myth Draenor trilogy, and the last two books, Spellstorm and Deathmax, were almost assignments. What I was going to cover in a given book was discussed and agreed upon beforehand, and then I set to work at top speed to write the tale. Elminster, The Making of a Mage, was written in it was written in 16 days. 8 two-day weekends. Both of my Double Diamond Triangle books were written in half a day each, so I literally didn't have time for convoluted plots, and at the same time was directly ordered to include lots of fighting. What I tried to do for me was to show love and give even the bad guys their moments of sympathy and explanation and reflection. They had life aims and dreams and families at home. And also to include strong female characters who were central to the story, not Frazetta Conan like babes wrapped around the man's ankles. I wanted to show everybody doing things for the best, even if they were wrong and what they did was terrible. They didn't think so. At the time, I wanted the. They didn't think so at the time. Okay. I wanted the lives of the characters to seem real, so full of mistakes and meanderings and sarcasm and foolishness among the heroics. Yeah, okay. So he actually just wrote these books in 16 days. That is bonkers. What was that 8 weeks? I haven't read any of these books. Maybe I should read these books. 16 days, 8 2-day weekends. So he what was he like working and then wrote these on his spare time? Some of the like most inspirational stories. What a Chad. EMI. During your time writing for TSR, how much did their vision for the Forgotten Realms differ from your original concepts? Were there elements you had to adapt or compromise on to fit the company's direction? Ed Greenwood. TSR controlled the published realms, not me. So when something was put into print and not presented as the views or words of an unreliable narrator, I always kept Elminster or Volo as my mouthpieces, reminding the reader that what they read might be wrong, so a DM could change things without arguments around the gaming table. It was canon from that instant on. Let me see here. What did I just read? Let's see here. I always kept. Okay, so he uses Elminster and Volo to go, well, I heard that it's actually like this, or I heard it's something like that. Which is actually probably what it most likely is. Interesting. Oh, wow. So the goofiness from Volo might actually be canon, more canon than what is. That's because it's coming from Ed Greenwood as like a mouthpiece. Okay. Where was I? Unrelated. I always Mr. Mouthpiece, reminding the reader that could be reminding the reader that what they read might be wrong. So a DM could change things without argument around the gaming table. Let's see. It was canon from that instant on. Whatever was published, I shifted to accept as what was reality, on the ground in the realms. When they embraced real world cultures or Hollywood versions, I didn't contradict them, but I leapt in to write little details of the world that were different than real world history, to make the realms different from our Earth in tiny ways. I would never have put the Dalai Lama into the realms. Oh my god, that's right. We're giving it Mongol, Ahem, Twigun, Horde. But when those things appeared, I tried to work with them to make everything fit into a huge, endlessly unfolded tapestry. I still work on the realms every day of my life, creating new details, large and small, and trying to leave the lore creations by others into big, coherent pieces. Hold on. and trying to leave the lore created by others into a big coherent piece. So I've always had to adapt and compromise, but by staying involved in the realms behind the scenes and out front stage, I've managed to keep influencing the realms and keep putting my original lore and new lore into it for everyone to use. I have always worked with game design and fiction writers behind the scenes, not to control what they're writing, but to make it fit the realms. Okay. TSR expanded Faerun into a large world of Toril by merging it with regions like Karatur, Sakhara, and Mastika. How much input did you provide in this transformation? And what were your feelings about seeing your world grow in ways beyond your initial design? Ed Greenwood. As I said earlier, I'm no fan of too close real-world analogs, and Karatur and Mastika were those. Sakhara is a Hollywood version of the real world borrowing, and I wouldn't have done that either. I had no input into Karatur and Mastika. Mastika or Mastika? It was Mastika. At all until after the fact, and worked with Jeff Grubb on Al-Qadim by deciding what spells I'd devise for my Anarach Realms product, which had been forced into real proximity by what Troy Danning had already written in his Harper's novel, The Parched Sea, could go into Qadim, and into Al-Qadim. Let's see here. Anarch Realms product could go, let's see. Okay. I have nothing at all against my world growing beyond the original design, though I have most of Lyricon, aka Return Abir, and other continents lightly designed in outline, and some elements of Round Space too, as I was the first freelancers to work with Jeff on Spelljammer. Oh, neat. It's only the too close to real world stuff I object to, because it robs us of creative new setting lore and can offend some real world folks needlessly. Facts. The release of the legendary video game Baldur's Gate marked the breakthrough for the realms, bringing it to a wider audience. How did you view its impact then? And what was it like seeing your world adapted into an interactive medium? I currently have a lot of fun playing in live stage shows and filmed live plays with some of the Baldur's Gate 3 voice actors. Oh, that's cool. Good for them. They were able to play with Ed Greenwood. I wonder if I can find any of these on YouTube. Maybe that's something we could do. Kind of like go over, just react, watch some of those videos. I wonder if that's legal. I'll think about it. I did some minor design work on the first two Baldur's Gate game. Creating the title books, creating the titles of books characters can come across in libraries. Oh, okay. For instance, in the real world, I've always worked in public libraries for over 50 years now. And I'm going to assume that you're asking here about Baldur's Gate 3, which I am overjoyed about. In past computer games, when your character met someone, it was either to kill them or take their stuff, or to negotiate or quiz them to get information you needed to progress in the game. BG3 gives you so much more. You can romance characters, become their friends, choose to adventure with them or not, shift your allegiances as the game advances, and so on. This entire dimension of getting along with other beings in the world as opposed to just using or eliminating them was added. And as with only few rare details, Volo and Elminster should not be killable, as they are both weave anchors whom Mr. and Azuth should step in to rescue. and Gale should not be able to progress as far as he can without Mishra's blessing. I recognize my realms in the game. They got it right. So I can really enjoy the game. I live in a rural area with slow internet that often just dies for long periods, so I can't even run the game on my computer. But I am currently doing a streamed playthrough with my friend and tech guru, Ivan. So he plays as I comment and advise, so I get to hang out and play with someone, not alone. Even better. Look at this dude. He's just... he is a D&D player. He is a D&D maker. What a Chad. EMI, was Baldur's Gate ultimately a blessing or a curse for the Forgotten Realms? On one hand, it skyrocketed its popularity and arguably made it a staple of D&D, but on the other, it seemed to shrink the focus of the Sword Coast, with places like Cormyr, Evermeet, and even Waterdeep fading from prominence, while regions like Neverwinter, Icewind Dale, and the Underdark dominated perceptions. The Sword Coast focus was a Wizards of the Coast Hasbro decision before BG3 was ever released, because the rest of the realms is easier for a third-party license to use if there's no current canon detail they have to match. I agree that this focus is a bad thing because we all deserve all realms. Because we all deserve all of the realms, not just one corner of it. The Baldur's Gate 3 game is not to blame. I mean, it's called Baldur's Gate, so you know. It needs to focus on, well, it needs to get to that. No. Ew, bot. Gross. Oh well, at least they count towards the, chatting. It is what it is. EMI, in recent years, there's been a push to portray Drow as not inherently evil, with more emphasis on good aligned Drow societies. How do you see this trend affecting the lore, and could it diminish the impact of characters like Drizzt, whose arc is built on overcoming his origins and the world's prejudices, similar to figures like Hellboy, who triumphed over their evil heritage? Oh. I think the shift offers a fascinating "you are there as the world changes before your eyes" moment. When crafting the first Drow the Underdark game book, titles seem to have a habit of getting reused. I was asked to create a good Drow deity. I came up with Elestray. And from the moment I did, a lot of gamers seemed very interested in her. Change is one constant in the real world, and fictitious worlds change. You'll seem more real. I think that's proving to be the case with the realms. Undeniably, Drizzt has more impact when he stood alone against most of his race, and therefore stood out in contrast. But we're seeing tales of his descendants now. The world moves on. In 1990, you wrote a book introducing the Drow goddess Elestray. What was the initial idea behind her creation? Was she always intended to be a good aligned deity? And how would you compare her personality and role to that of her mother, Lolth? Elestray, not the name of the specifics of her as female, but as the Dark Dancer. Not the name or the specifics, okay. Was an editorial assignment. Create a good Drow deity for good Drow to follow, and make that deity have impact worshippers in the realms above, the surface world, not just the realms below, the Underdark. She was always intended to be good aligned, and her very existence helps. In design terms, how Lolth can be so evil and so powerful and yet fail to achieve much of anything or get anywhere except in Drow cities she already dominates. If Lilith can thwart Corellon and the other elven deities, why isn't she already ruling the world? Or at least the Underdark, and or the elven world? The existence of Varun and Alistrae helps explain that, and more importantly, increases possibilities for play at your gaming table and many others. It's a time of chaos and conflict. The actions of your player characters may very much matter. And that, as designers, is what we're always trying to do. During TSR's financial difficulties in the 1990s, we offered to continue writing Forgotten Realms books for free to help keep the line alive. Why do you think this suggestion was rejected, and how did that moment affect your relationship with the company? I have no idea as to why it was rejected. Possibly because someone saw it as losing control over me or the books I produced. But that's sheer speculation on my part. As TSR began to run down communications, except on a personal level, between me and close friends at the company I'd been working with, faded away. So communications started to fade away. And that was a change in relationship, and the reason why I have no idea about the rejection too. But I've never worked on Realms for money. Could have made much more doing many other things. I work on the Realms because I wanted to. Because I love the setting and I love sharing it. I would write Realms novels for free right now if they'd let me. The problem is I'd need to find some other way of getting income as I get old and health problems accumulate and the need for funds with it. The time I'd spend on Realms novels would take away time from getting paid for doing something else. Such is the reality of time. EMI, when Wizards of the Coast acquired D&D and asked you to continue writing for the Realms, how did the experience differ from your time with TSR? Were there changes in creative freedom? There were a gentleman's agreement in place, unwritten but understood by everyone involved, over the protocol using Realms characters. So different writers wouldn't use the same characters in contradictory ways, such as a writer killing her off while writer B married her off and made her a ruler. And places, I write bucolic rest scenes in a village, but you write about a war that's already destroyed the village. That simply vanished overnight because the new folks didn't know about them. Then there were the 100-year 4E time jump and the spell plague, which harmed the very strength of the setting. The rich tapestry without interruptions, and a cast of NPCs we'd built up that suddenly died of old age overnight without their tales getting told. Oof. That's right, 4th edition was crazy. Other than that, there were summits over major series and changes such as the Sundering, which were golden moments of getting together and talking plot elements face to face. That I'll always cherish. Their last published novel in the Realms was Death Mask in 2016. Will we see more books set in Faerun from your future, or are there any ongoing projects you'd like to hint at? I'm working on a collaboration with Reese York and others right now, entitled Souls for the Taking, and I have in the past published a mere short story on DM's Guild, All Things Through the Bright Flames. I collaborated on Game Source books, also available at the Guild, entitled The Border Kingdoms and Thay, Land of the Red Wizards, with Alex Kamer and Alan Patrick, and many other Realms-related collaborations in the works. From new Volos guides to new regional source books, and intended to go on working on detailing the Realms through various means for as long as I can. EMI, a controversial topic. Retcons in the Forgotten Realms and other settings. As the creators of As the creator of Faerun, how do you feel about changes made by others, such as introducing entire cities of good drow with explanation, they were always there, or similar retcons in other hobbies like Warhammer 40K's Adepta Custodes shifting to multi-gender with they were always there. Is there a good way to handle retcons? Perhaps through events? Hello? There it goes. And novels that alter the setting organically, or is a simple phrase like that sufficient? Unless new territory is being explored, or a magical or other barrier or deception removed to reveal things in a new light, the was always there is never a good design way to introduce or explain anything. And unless there are valid lack of time or world count or legal rights reasons for explanations, it's always lazy design to do so. Give fans, gamers, readers an in-world reason or presentation for the retcon, even if it's something as clumsy as when the moons come into conjunction, this entire species changes, or some BS, right? No, that makes sense. Like, don't just, it's always been there, guys. You guys just stuck and are dumb. Much better is to, as with the drow shift mentioned before, show the change happening or the revelation of why what we thought we knew up until now was wrong. And we should now see something differently. Change is never easy or accepted by everyone, but to not make that effort is, to me, just lazy design and disrespect for the audience and the creation you're working on. That is so true. I cannot stand when that fact is, just is said, like, oh, they've always been there. It's like, obviously, they've always kind of been there, especially with the drow, right? They created Elistrea, but to say that the whole large civilization has been around, it feels, it is lazy. Even, I'm not even a writer, but it, like, just people see that, and it's just like, it's unbelievable, right? It just feels bad. Like, it's a slap in the face to everyone's intelligence, right? So if you really want to make sweeping changes, just make it believable, right? Like, for the drow, for instance, something you could do, or something that you can say was like, well, more and more drow have started following Elistrea, and they're all kind of given paths towards each other and towards this new civilization that they started to create. A village turned into a town, turned into a city. That's the whole thing. Like, that would have been, oh man, that would have been a cool idea to kind of like look into. Man, what missed opportunity. What a hugely missed opportunity. And like the challenge, oh man, this story is just writing itself, right? Like, the challenges that place could have against like the inherent racism, right, that they would have inflicted upon them, right? And then their struggle to, let's say, keep themselves from turning into like this weird haven of like, seedy people, because like, oh, this is where the downtrodden and stricken, socially stricken go to, and they're like, no, we're not being bad people here. That would be, oh man, what a miss to do that, instead of just saying, oh, they're all here. There could have been so much exploration of that idea. What a, man, it just feels bad, right? It's just such a missed opportunity. But let's move forward. maybe we could kind of like want it. No, maybe not. It's too big. There we go. Close enough. We'll fill upwards. EMI. If you can go back in time and change any elements of the world you created, what would be the first thing you'd alter and why? Not having the World Mirror Edition changes in the game. What? Not have the World Mirror Edition changes in the game. That must be an error right there. I'm not exactly sure what was trying to be said. So, no time of troubles. Avoid having any gods on stage in person, as opposed to speaking in dreams or showing manifestation. And cut back drastically on realms-shattering events like the spell play. Eradicate big change events first. No need for any of them until we've explored the entire world thoroughly in sourcebooks. We've only seen half of one continent. True. Absolutely true. Right? Like, this world is crazy this guy came up with. There's so much stuff. And we've only seen like half it, and they're like, oh, let's destroy all of the, realities of existence. Like, dog, like, chill. Beyond the Forgotten Realms, he created other works like the Band of Four series, Falconfar, and Castlemorn. Can you tell us about these non-realms projects and what inspired them? All of these projects are things I was asked to do, and all of them involve creating new worlds. Do lots of other game designs and fiction too. I recently wrote a novel for Fate of the Norns Vikings role-playing game entitled The One-Eyed King, and before that penned a folklore, the Affliction novel, and The Whispering Skull. And pen a folklore. Interesting. The Band of Four briefly explores a corner of Aglirta, the various baronies along a river. Castlemorn introduces us to an entire new world, one continent of some large offshore islands. And Falconfire looks at what happens if a fantasy writer's work creates or influences a fantasy setting that's connected to our modern real world, and what happens when he finds himself suddenly plunged into that setting. The motherfucker just made himself an isekai. He's just like, I'm just gonna do an isekai. That's funny. I love to tell stories, and I love to create worlds, so when someone asks me to do those things, I leap at the chance if I possibly can. In all three cases, plus the Fate of the Norns novel, friends asked me to create something, so I did, with glee. In every case, I went down to the human level of look over the shoulder of interesting characters as they live their lives and go along for the ride. I asked myself what they'd see and feel, and just wrote about it. What a freaking jab, dude. I can't stop saying that. Like, you're just like, hey, can you just write a whole ass book? And it's like, yeah, sure, why not? That's crazy. I never really followed like that deeply into this sort of stuff, but just like, God, just the amount of imagination that just overflows from this dude is bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Have you developed any new settings outside the Forgotten Realms in recent years? Would you be willing to create an entirely new world that could rival the scope and depth of Faerun? And what might that look like? Non-disclosure agreements prevent me from speaking freely about some settings I've created, developed, or am at work on. The short answer to both of your question here is yes. I created several settings and developed many more that were created by others. Right now, I'm detailing cities and Darren Drader's Daring and Dread campaign. Oh my god. Darren Drader's Daring and Dread campaign setting, and have finished work on environs of oh, get Gaizen Gax from GUI Cube. Wow. If I was setting out to do brand new large scope setting, I'd want it to have different focus than the realms. Like with magic working in different ways, and I think, for me, it's time to explore more intrigue and less fighting monsters for a bit. Ooh, excuse me. Looking back on your career, what has been the most rewarding aspect of sharing the Forgotten Realms with the world, and how has the community influenced your ongoing passion for it? The most rewarding aspect of sharing the realms with the world has been making friends among writers, gamers, artists, and other creative folks all over the world, and being invited to conventions to see a lot of the world too. I love the realms that fans have shown me, and their endless lore questions about the setting to try to make their games and fiction and imagining richer inspires me every day to go on working on the realms. It has truly become my life's work that I'm happy to tackle every day until my last one. Thank you immensely, Mr. Greenwood, for joining us and offering such a profound insight into if our let's see here. Thank you immensely, Mr. Greenwood, for joining us and offering such profound insights into the Forgotten Realms and your creative journey. It's been an absolute honor to hear from the mind that brought so much wonder to life. Your stories continue to inspire and transport us. Before we conclude, could you share with our readers where they can purchase your books, such as Elemental Series or Death Mass, how they can stay updated on your future projects or connect with you? Ed Greenwood. The easiest way to get my Realm book and those with other publishers and settings I've mentioned here is through Amazon, in paper, Kindle book, ebook, or Audible audiobook formats. To reach me these days, the best way is to join my Patreon. I am Ed Greenwood there. Greenwood's Grotto on Discord. Oh, dude, I want to. Hell yeah. Or find my Realms lore videos on my YouTube channel. I also do the Mages and Sages podcast. I should follow all of these. We should all follow these. I can be seeing playing Elminster on the Six Sides of Gaming YouTube channel, or playing a Greyhawk mage, oh my god, Ravalantar, oh my god, these pronunciations are bonkers. Greyhawk mage, Ravalantar, on Lord Gosumba's J. Scott's Twitch TV channel, or guessing from time to time on his Gabbin at Lord's Peak Twitch show. I usually write new Realms and Greyhawk lore for those appearances. Or see me in person at GaryCon in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin in February, Gen Con in Indianapolis every July or August, and Gamehold Con in Madison, Wisconsin in October. I go to other cons like Phantasm in Peterborough, Ontario, Anime North in Toronto, Ontario, and Grand Con in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I can snatch the time. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the realms. May the realms be bright light in your life forever.